think about how you hold yourself accountable and how you hold others accountable.
Because being accountable is not just about thinking and doing. It's about your brand.
And I think it's important that as we develop our own high standards, that we don't put those standards on other people. So many people get stuck in the, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Versus, let's take the lesson and move forward. Welcome back to Unapologetic Rabble-Rousers. I'm DocShellie.
And I'm Carla. We're picking up on our next segment. And this time we're going to be focused on accountability.
Accountability. A big word with lots of meaning.
Oh my gosh. We've got a lot to cover.
Yes, we do.
Why don't we start by laying down some definition about what are we talking about in terms of accountability? What are the components of accountability? We're talking at a very personal level. This accountability starts like at your deepest core. And we need to talk about the importance of it, why it matters, and how it reflects itself out to the world. Let's start there.
Okay. When I think about accountability, it's my willingness to take accountability. I can't use accountability when I'm defining accountability.
Oh, yeah.
To take ownership of my actions and my behaviors, my words, and the impact that I have for myself and for the people around me.
Owning that complete responsibility.
Yes.
Because it's not just about what happens inside. It's about the so what of that.
And the consequences of that, yeah. The benefits or the consequences. It could be either.
Okay. All right. So if being accountable is being willing and able to take ownership of my thoughts, my words, my deeds, and the impacts those have on those around me, starting with myself, then let's talk about the components of accountability, the components of taking that ownership.
It starts with my favorite, self-reflection. I love me some self-reflection. But I think in order to really think about how you hold yourself accountable and how you hold others accountable, you need to take some assessment of your actions and your behaviors. And again, the impact that you're having on your own life and the impact that you're having on the people around you. I think that's really important to think about accountability, because if you don't hold yourself accountable and people see that, and then you try to hold others accountable, you're going to have a really hard time.
Yeah, I think that there would be some confusion that might set up.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah. So this is about being real honest with yourself. This is about me, myself, and I sitting down and having a good talking to about what it means to be accountable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so self-reflection. Then that suggests I'm taking some responsibility. If I'm going to think about it to that level, then it's about taking responsibility for what comes out of that reflection.
And what comes out could be both positive or negative when you think about ways that you hold yourselves accountable. Are you beating yourself up, or are you kind to yourself? Are you putting yourself down because you slipped in accountability for something? Are you judgmental of others and how they maybe are not holding themselves accountable? So there's a lot of things to look at when you think about taking responsibility around your accountability.
That brings out the notion of casting blame. It's not about casting blame. Whether you blame yourself for being an idiot because you just violated some thing you said you were going to be accountable for, whatever it might be. It's not about blame. It's about focusing on what we can control and what we can improve.
Absolutely.
Okay, so taking responsibility after having gone through that self-reflection, takes you now to
setting goals and having standards.
Oh, no.
What?
So setting goals. That's really about getting very, very clear on what it is that you're intending to do.
Yeah, we have expectations of ourselves. Sometimes we have them of other people, but it's really important to understand what you expect of yourself and how you'll hold yourself accountable. If you're setting yourself goals and the goal slips, how are you going to treat yourself? What are you going to do? That should be part of your goal setting process.
So the goal setting process involves establishing what it is that I want to achieve and the standards that I'm going to hold myself to in order to deliver on that. Because being accountable, it's not just about thinking and doing. You've got your own personal brand that revolves, or that accountability, that responsibility, and all of the things that we've talked about so far in the episodes preceding this one. It's about your brand. It makes up your brand. And even when you look at yourself in the mirror, there are going to be some things you see that are hidden from everybody else, but it's because you know you, that are not up to the standards of the brand that you would want to develop and maintain. Mm-hmm. So I think being able to establish high standards, whatever high sounds like for you.
And I think it's important that as we develop our own high standards, that we don't put those standards on other people. I remember years ago, very early on in my leadership journey, I had a gentleman who worked for me, and he had a very different work ethic than I did. He did the bare minimum to do what was required, and nothing else and nothing more. And it drove me batshit crazy. And my boss said to me, you can't expect someone to have the same operating procedures or operating standards that you have when you haven't had a conversation about it. And I said, I have had a conversation about it. He still isn't doing what I expect him to do. And he said, it was a very interesting conversation, but he's like, you can't hold other people to your standards. And I've taken that to heart over the years, because when I do try to hold people to whatever my standards may be, it's nothing but disappointment when they don't meet them.
And we've talked about that, right? We have assumptions about things like standards. And of course, they would all be like mine, right?
Right. They should just know. They should just be. They should just be like me.
They should just know.
That's my favorite. Gosh. They should just know.
And we'll be talking about that on and off for many months to come. So, yes, being able to have those standards and the expectations, but make sure you're clear on the expectations you're having of others around that whole notion
check
of the
yourself.
standard. Yeah. Check yourself.
Are you setting yourself up for disappointment?
Right.
But really, the only person we can hold accountable to our standards is ourselves. And that's important to remember as you're thinking about accountability. I think if we move on from the setting goals and having standards, admitting mistakes.
Okay.
Admit when you are wrong, which is really interesting to me, because I've always been a person that will come forward and say, I screwed this up. In the workplace, if there's fear in the organization, or there's a lack of trust, a lack of respect with leadership or the team, it's really hard to admit mistakes. And I see a lot of people trying to hide their mistakes, make it look like it was somebody else, doing the blame game. And you think about in your personal life, when you are not holding yourself accountable to something, there's no one else to blame.
No, and there's the opportunity to deflect. It's an easy one to take. It doesn't serve the greater good for you. No. To deflect, to blame someone else for the reason that there was a mistake.
Ugly look. It is. It's just ugly when people do that.
Yeah.
And I have always looked at mistakes as opportunities for learning. This isn't novel and new, but a lot of people wallow in the mistake. How did it happen? Why did it happen? And they just continue to go down that path. Mm-hmm. And I'm one to say, like, did anybody die? Did anybody physically get harmed? If no, let's move on. We can fix this going forward. Let's learn from the mistake. Let's not do it again. And let's move forward. It's so many people get stuck in the, how did this happen? Why did this happen? Versus let's move forward. Let's take the lesson and move forward. Sometimes it's important to know why it happened, but a lot of times it's not.
The fact is it did. What can we take from it?
What can we do going forward?
Yeah. Prevention is the better avenue. You know, I just have to mention this notion of lessons learned, since we're talking about learning from things, and there are positive consequences and negative consequences that all have lessons for us to learn. And in the work that I do, one of the things I find so often is that organizations will have attempted to do something before and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. And there were plenty of reasons why. And they may have even taken some opportunity to document what had gone on. But leverage those lessons? No.
Oh,
no. No. Even the very notion of having to sit down and have that kind of conversation, it's not something that you wait for a particular time to do it. It's important to be learning all the time. It's about gauging, is what's going on here working well? Is it going the way I thought it would? Is it not? Okay. If it is, okay. But what can I take from that? What is it that I might want to replicate? What is it that I might want to tweak? What is it that I want to stop doing because it's not getting me closer to where I want to be?
And that's all part of the problem solving aspect of it, right? Is we've got something that didn't work before. And how many times do you hear that in the workplace? We've tried that before, it doesn't work. I try not to go down the path of tell me why it didn't work, but more along the lines of what were the missed opportunities, to shift the focus from it didn't work before, why are we spending time on this again? So when you can shift the questions, you can shift the focus to be more forward thinking than past thinking. But it's really about problem solving and not dwelling on the problems and not dwelling on the mistakes and the excuses, but leaning into that accountability and, again, just moving forward, learning from the experiences, learning from the mistakes, adapt your approach going forward.
Yes.
Life is a learning experience. None of us have ever done this before.
No. Enjoy the ride.
Exactly.
So another element of this is going to be being able to communicate. No, I know.
That darn C word just keeps coming up.
I know. It's like we've mentioned before. It is always the problem.
And always the solution.
That's right. Okay, so effective communication. This is just being open and honest and transparent. Being transparent about what it is that's being intended. What are your intentions? And being able to be very clear about that.
And the impact. I think impact is really important here too. If I'm trying to hold you accountable to something, we probably should have had a conversation before I try to hold you accountable to something. Mm-hmm. I think about people in the workplace. I've probably shared this example in some previous podcast episode, but how many leaders I have had conversations with about a team member who's late. Late for what? Are they late to meetings? No, they're just late every day. Late to what? Well, we're all here at 8:00. They don't come in till 8:30. Do they know they're supposed to be here at 8:00? Is there a reason they have to be here at 8:00? They should just know. They should just know. How do people know if you don't tell them?
I shouldn't have to tell them.
Exactly.
Because they should
pet
just
peeve
know.
Of mine.
Well,
yeah. But even when we think about our own goals, things that we want to do, the expectations we have for ourselves, how often do we not hold ourselves accountable and we make an excuse? We blame someone else. We're not even having a good internal dialogue with ourselves around what's really going on.
It's kind of frightening when you think about it, that we hold all of these expectations of people around us to be, forthright and very honest and paying attention and being accountable,
Right.
and then take yourself aside and say, yeah, okay, are you walking in those shoes too?
Exactly. Exactly.
Can you? Oh, so we want to be transparent. We want to establish what are the commitments, and we even need to be open and honest with ourselves and others about the challenges.
Absolutely.
Because it may be a challenge for me, but if I don't mention it as being a challenge, and you've figured out how to crack that nut, I'm going to sit there and continue to be challenged.
Right. Seeking help from people around you that you trust, that you respect. Sometimes it can be hard depending on what the issue is. And there could be a level of embarrassment or shame, or I should have this figured out by now.
I know. I should know this.
But being able to build community and talk with other people that may have had a similar experience or the same experience, and learning what they learned can help you as you figure out your problem solving. Mm-hmm. It can really help you move along that continuum.
And it's all lessons. It's just all about enriching your awareness. You cannot possibly know everything.
What?
Well, you can. Forgive me. But okay.
Totally joking.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm not. So, okay, let's move on from effective communication then. Because if we have this communication, we're talking about commitments and we're talking about challenges, then we need to be able to be problem solvers too.
Absolutely.
You need an orientation to saying, okay, there is something that needs to be solved. Let's focus on that, not focus on the fact that there is something that needs to be solved. Let's focus on the solving.
And don't make excuses. Don't play the blame game, all that stuff we've just covered. It's just get it solved and move on. Mm-hmm. Again, learn that lesson through the problem solving. There's going to be some trial and error. Your problem solving might not be the first solution you come up with might not be the right one.
Mm-hmm. But you'll know one more that isn't the right one.
Exactly.
So was it Thomas Edison who said,
yeah,
it took him 10,000 tries to figure out the right way,
yeah.
But he did not have 9,000 plus failures.
Right.
He just found 9,000 plus ways to not
do
the light bulb.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so it's about focusing on the solutions. It's about being proactive in your thinking. It's taking the steps and looking for feedback along the way and adapting to what the signals you're getting, the feedback you're getting, what you're seeing that isn't working.
Absolutely.
Adaptability is huge in problem solving.
Yes.
Then we would think about, okay, we've got all these great ideas about self-reflection and taking responsibility and goals and all of that stuff. Well, how about consistency? Imagine what would happen if we were consistent and we were reliable in the way we approach things. What we would demonstrate with that.
Yeah, it's so funny. Just as you were saying that, I was reflecting on a person with whom I used to work. I actually reported to this person, and there was zero consistency in how this person showed up. There was zero consistency on how this person communicated. There was zero consistency on if or when she tried to hold people accountable.
Was this the undiagnosed 28 personality person?
Yes.
Okay.
How did you guess? It was the most bizarre thing that I have ever experienced in my professional life. To work for someone who just, you literally never knew how they were going to show up. And to the point where if I went to the bathroom and I stopped to talk to somebody and I was gone for maybe 15 minutes, she had a big problem with that. I'm like, somebody needed my help. I stopped on the way or to or from the bathroom. It's not a big deal. You weren't in your office. Right, because I'm out building relationships and connections with people. And so she would try to hold me accountable to these ridiculous expectations that she had, that I should be in my office from 8 o'clock until 5 o'clock, and I only had a half hour for lunch. Never mind, it took 20 minutes to walk to the cafeteria. But you get people like that try to hold you accountable to things that are just so unrealistic. So when you think about the consistency and reliability, how you show up matters. So if I see you, I'm going to hold myself accountable in this spot, but over here, I know I stated all these goals that I have and these things I want to accomplish, but I'm not. We're just gonna ignore those for right now.
Yeah, this is my favorite spot, so I'm really focused on this.
Or you're holding other people accountable, but you don't hold them accountable for the same things. Different expectations for different people. You see that in the workplace a lot too. And then you see someone who's being held accountable in a very different way or a different manner than you've been held accountable. All of those things add up to that personal brand that we talked about, the leadership brand. So where you're consistent, where you're following through on your commitments, you are exhibiting the things that you want to do, you're exhibiting the things that you want other people to do, it makes it easier to trust that that's how you're going to show up every single time. And it makes it easier for yourself to hold yourself accountable when you consistently show up for yourself.
Think back to the self-reflection. Take a look at your own personal accountability to self and the consistency and reliability. There's some easy targets there. Yeah. Exercise, diet, not doing electronics, not taking your cell phone out to dinner with the family, whatever it might be. So it's about being able to, it's not just me in relationship to you in the outside world, it's me in relationship to me and being my best self at all times.
Absolutely.
So consistency and reliability are going to be an important piece of that. And through all of it, through all of this, through the learning, the introspection, the reflection, the lessons, all of that, this is about, well, it sounds kind of businessy, but it's about continuous improvement. We are evolving every moment. Mm-hmm. And so being able to harness all that comes from what we're just talking about what are the elements of being accountable. It's about getting better at it every time, all the time, with every breath. Being able to consider your own self-improvement, the growth that we get out of this. And I want to say, as we are speaking this, I'll own it. As I'm speaking this, I'm not just telling things. I'm consuming the very messages that we are delivering today.
Right.
As I have all of these. But especially when it comes to being accountable, we have an accountability agreement with the work that we're doing together here on the podcast. Mm-hmm. To learn, to grow, to stretch, to challenge our thinking. And you've witnessed some of those differences back and forth, and it's all good.
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to recognize nobody's perfect at this. We're going to falter. We're going to make mistakes. But here again, how do we manage those mistakes? We learn from them and we continue to grow. And that continuous growth, personally and professionally, is really important on the journey of becoming our best selves. And I don't know anyone that doesn't want to be their best version. No. I'm just a side note here. As we've been growing with this podcast, the lessons that we have learned and trying to hold ourselves accountable for some basic stuff like tech. We have sticky notes everywhere about things that need to be plugged in and turned on and all that. But the point is that if you need to set up some reminders for yourself about being consistent and being reliable and doing the things that we've talked about today, do it. Absolutely. I was at my friend's mom's house the other day and there were sticky notes everywhere reminding about check the lock, check the window, check the whatever, watch your step, but just all sorts of reminders that to take care of you and your surrounding. It was kind of cool. And I was like, I've got a couple sticky notes. Check the gate when I let the dog outside because it blows open sometimes and that little scoundrel will run away. But just simple reminders can be really helpful to help keep things in front of you, because the more we see it, the more we'll remember it and we'll take action on it.
We will be accountable.
Yes.
So in the end,
I think accountability just in and of itself is important for trust for self, trust for others. It is inherent. It's an inherent aspect of respect, integrity. And when we can do it both personally and professionally, we'll build better brands for ourselves. We'll have better connections. We'll have better relationships. I think it impacts so much of how we live our life. So we want to get good at holding ourselves accountable.
And we're going to talk more about that in the next episode.
Tune in next time. I'm DocShellie.
I'm Carla. Thanks. Take care.
Accountability, it's an inherent aspect of respect, integrity, and I think it impacts so much of how we live our life.